Greetings everyone and welcome to bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. This is a special video version of Running with the Herd for the game from January the 16th, 2016, the English Premier Ice Hockey League game between the Basingstoke Bison and the Sheffield Steeldogs. Final score, Basingstoke Bison 1, Sheffield Steeldogs 2. I'm not going to lie. The chief reason I'm doing this is that we all know what happened in this game. If you aren't aware, the game didn't end well, shall we say. But what we're going to do is, normally I would sit down and I would write. I'm not gonna lie. I came away from this game feeling. I mean, the result is the result, but at the end of a very, very long week where I wanted to sit down and watch just watch a game of ice hockey, I ended up coming away just feeling massively frustrated. And I tried to sit down and think about how I was going to write this. And truth be told, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I'd be able to do it justice. So I wanted to do what I usually do from time to time, which is just do something a little bit different on Banners on the Wall. Take a step away from doing the long form writing and try and do something a bit shorter and a bit more punctuated like this. Also, we know about the incidents at the end of the game, the bench clearance, the fights and bits and pieces of that, and what happened around that. I'm going to cover the game, and then I'm going to talk about that as well. The one thing I probably do need to say is the better team won. 2 goals for the Steeldogs, who scored 2 goals in the first 6 minutes 30 seconds. First goal at 3:51 on Lodes Bosas von Lubomir Korhorn from Tim Smith. Second goal was a power play goal, scored by Andrew Hurst from Stanislav Vlasic from Lee Hayward. Bison's goal coming at 19:35. Kieran Long from Joe Greener from Rene Yarrelin, so certainly a familiar combination. The Bison, for pretty much the duration of the game, looked slightly off the pace. And they just didn't have the jump they usually do. The lines had been shuffled around to try and counteract Sheffield, which is a team that we've generally had a problem with in terms of playing. And they didn't work. The Bison were caught sort of flat-footed and slow, and two early goals past John Baston, who couldn't really do anything about either of them. And then with being 2 goals in the hole, left to chase the game again, and the lines got shuffled around, and the Long Greener Yarrelin combination, which hadn't been together all night, is put back together, and the first thing they do on their first shift back together is score. So make of that what you will. The game, the rest of it was incredibly ill-tempered. Lots of stuff on and off the puck from both sides. But ultimately, actually, the story of the game itself, the hockey that was played, was one team is incredibly good at playing their game plan, and the other team tried to play that game plan and isn't quite as good at it. And then we got the situation at the end where the Steeldogs, for all intents and purposes, parked the bus, looked to break quickly because they can do, because they've got people like Korhorn, like Bosas, like Lazchek, who's not quite as quick, but they've got guys who transition very, very quickly through the neutral zone. So all they needed to do at 2-1 up at a team that's only lost once at home all season is sit back and try and go when they got the chances. Whereas the Bison unfortunately fell into the trap they usually do, which is there's a lot of huff and a lot of puff, but not much direction and not much sort of pointed attack, as it were. Too many guys trying to be that little spark of magic, which is all well and good, and it's one of those things where the effort was 100% there, but the execution just didn't come off. The game was ill-tempered, to say the least. Started off really, as if you look at the penalties, a lot of flack for this game, and its outcome is going to fall on the shoulder of Paul Brooks, and this is where I'm really, really glad that I always take a step away and I always sleep before I do anything like this. I'm not a fan of Mr. Brooks' game management style, but I do like Paul Brooks, if you see what I mean. As a referee, he's very interesting for me in the sense that compared to some of the other officials, and he's comparatively young, he's quite a young guy from what I understand compared to the other guys, but he backs his decisions. If he's made the decision, then he's made it. He doesn't falter and he doesn't waver. And actually, I think that's a really, really good trait for a referee to have. I think the problem that he had on this night was that there were situations where he either could have made calls or could have made stronger calls that would have that may have averted the problems that we saw at the end. And that's not to put all the blame on Mr. Brooks, because whilst I don't think this was his finest night, I don't doubt he'll go on to have many more nights in the armbands and certainly better ones than these ones. We can't lay all the blame at his door because the players on the ice need to be accountable for some of their actions as well. This was an ill-tempered game, chippy to say the least, but it's sensible coaching. Andre Pyatt, when he coached the Steeldogs, did the same thing with the Bison, and Greg Wood is a smart coach, and he did exactly the same thing. For whatever reason, the Steeldogs are a bit of a bogey team for the Bison, and it paid off for them. The Steeldogs are ultimately better at playing their style, and people say that they've moved away from what people used to know as Dogs hockey, and they have to a point. But this was what it was: clogging the passing lanes, being very, very physical. And the problem with the Bison is that they will either try and pass around you or be more physical than you. And when you end up with a team completely clogging the passing lanes and the neutral lanes you can't pass, that's plan A gone. And when you've got a team that's just as physical, if not slightly more than you, that's plan B gone. And then we're ultimately reverting to dump and chase, which if Sheffield did what they did, which was just pull everybody back, then you can't really do much about that. Sometimes you can be the quote-unquote better team. There's a reason why over the course of the season the Bison are at the top of the table and Sheffield are where they are. But on the night, the better team just won, and I think we probably have to accept that. And nor can we particularly lay all of the blame for that loss at the door of the officials, because there's a fair amount of penalties called in both directions. But ultimately, it's about putting the small little black disc thingy in the goal thingy, and the Bison only managed to do it once to the Steeldogs twice. A funny few minutes at the beginning, and it ended up costing the Bison in the end. That doesn't detract from the fact that this was just a horrible game to watch. It was a poor game that could have and should have arguably been officiated better. But we ended up with what we got. The first big incident, of course, was the 5+ game for slashing to Ryan Watt, which wasn't sort of an event that came out of nowhere. Arnoldas Bozas landed a hit on Thomas Karpov that I thought was illegal. Mr. Brooks, being correct, clearly disagreed with me. This led to Karpov chasing Bozas around, and it looked like for a moment Karpov was actually going to drop the gloves, which would have been terrible. And Lack stepped in, and then Watt eventually just took it upon himself to just take a two-handed slash to the back of Bozas's knees, which got him thrown out. A few sort of bits of breakdown there. Lewis Bell, Ben Morgan actually skated from one side of the ice to the other to jump onto a Bison player, and he got 2+2 for fighting in and amongst that. How he didn't get more is interesting. But such is life. But from there, if you think that incident happens a minute and 7 seconds into the second period, after what's already been a very chippy first, it wasn't going to get any better from there. The crowd certainly were getting very, very frustrated. I can't speak for the Steeldogs fans on the other side of the rink. Obviously, probably very happy with the win, but what their take on the officiating is, I don't particularly know. Certainly, the Bison fans around me felt very irked by the fact that certain calls seem to be being made too much. There was a couple of too many men calls that, whilst I know of at least one person who said to me that one of them was nailed on. I'm more than happy to give the benefit of the doubt on one of them. The first one wasn't. If you look, there's too many men calls. Second one, probably fair. The first one, I had that as 5 men on the ice. There was 4 men on the ice. Another one stepped off and played the puck. That's 5. There's a lot of call about an illegal equipment call for Kurt Reynolds, which, again, actually, I thought Mr. Brooks got correct. The issue there is that Bozas is hooking Reynolds, loses his stick. Reynolds falls on top of his stick, but instead of just getting the stick out of his equipment and dropping it on the floor, he throws it away, and that's where you get the problem. And then you get to the end of the game. There was a bunch of stuff that happened at the buzzer. Bozas took a whack of somebody, I believe it was Van Trober, for shooting after the whistle. At least somebody said he shot after the whistle. He didn't. And then just sort of all hell broke loose. You had You had Joe Greener sort of sat on top of a Steeldogs player, giving him a couple of shots. We had punches being thrown all over the place. And then everything seemed to quieten down a little bit, and then Callum Patterson decided to be Callum Patterson and decided to throw a punch at Miroslav Van Trobe, that well-known instigator and fighter. And then we had a variety of bits and pieces like that. Thomas Barkworth pulling the helmet off of his opposite backup netminder number, Dan Weller-Evans, punching Dan in the face, and Dan deciding to retaliate in kind. And for as much of the Billy Big Potatoes act that Barkworth gave as he went off the ice, there was only one clear winner of that fight, and it wasn't him. I think the biggest issue for me, actually, off of the back of this, is that no side has particularly covered itself in glory. And I was very sad as a hockey fan last night. There was a variety of things from players on the ice and coming off the ice, as well as fans in the crowd, that was just not acceptable, really. A variety of language, hand signals from one member of the Steeldogs, Bison fans yelling obscenities at players and bench staff from the Steeldogs. The Steeldogs giving it back in kind as well, and not taking the advice of some people, which was to just get back into the changing room, get yourself sorted, and get out of the rink, kind of thing. But yeah, this is not a good day for Basingstoke hockey in a couple of ways. I think we've been hockey, irrespective of whether you like this whole family sport label that gets hung on hockey, you need to behave like an adult if you're an adult. And Bavy says it enough times, and maybe we need to say it in a slightly different way, because maybe it's kind of been lost on some people. But what happens out there stays out there on the ice. We need to leave it to those guys. And if they, whatever circumstances you can, wherever you want to lay your blame for wherever all the stuff at the end started, it's not our place to get involved. There's a variety of bits and pieces flying around, cans being thrown at the Steeldogs, which if you've done it, you should be banned from the rink, and I don't want to see you. The accusations of hand gestures towards the crowd, which I personally saw. So I'm not gonna, and the individual in question knows that he's done that, and should own up to what he's done and just leave it at that. But yeah, it was and also a very, very nasty incident as well, where for some bizarre reason off-ice security decided to jump into the fight between Barkworth and Weller-Evans to separate them when they had no place doing so. That was pretty unsavoury as well. Somebody could have got very, very seriously hurt as a result of that. And actually, luckily, both Doug Shepherd and Mr. Brooks both interjected to tell security to, not get involved in such things. I'm sorry to have basically just kind of like rambled on and ranted for the better part of a quarter of an hour, but I didn't. This was tough for me. At the end of a very long week, I wanted to come and watch the thing and watch the sport that this is my relaxation. I have a bit of a yell, and I get it out of my system, and then I do my writing bits, which I love, and I can't do that off the back of this game. And there's a variety of people to blame. Ultimately, it's one of those. It happens occasionally in ice hockey. It's a physical sport played by competitive guys who give a toss. And actually, I think both Bison and Steeldogs fans would be happy that their teams care so much. But this isn't the way to do it. If it is what it is in the situation. There's standing up for your teammates, and there's doing X, Y, and Z. But the end of it all was just unsavoury, and I think ultimately there needs to be a variety of apologies from all sides. I made a point of wishing the Steeldogs fans a safe journey back, because they, not their fault at all. They came down, the few of them that were there, they had a couple of drums, they made a bit of noise, they came to watch a game of hockey, and they've got to go home at the end. There's no reason why we shouldn't. But this is I'm going to admit to being at a loss, really. I hope some of the stuff that happened off ice from the Steeldogs players, and anything from our players as well, if there was anything sort of inappropriately done, I hope it's punished. I hope fans, if they are found to have done anything, are punished as well. A big thanks to all the Steeldogs fans who made the journey down. Well done for keeping up the noise. Congrats to the Steeldogs on the win. Bison head to Telford tonight, which is Sunday, and then the Cup semi-final on Wednesday. Hopefully this is a blip in the road, and it's a blip in what is normally a very fun, very happy atmosphere in Basingstoke hockey, and we can move on. We can leave this unsavoury incident behind us and move on to bigger and better things as a result. So for bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. So long till next time.